Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. This is the programme where you can have your property related questions answered by our team of property experts. I'm Stephen Galpin and with me today are Andy Wood, Director of ETC Tax, welcome.
Hi there.
Simon Zutshi, author and founder of Property Investors Network.
Hello.
Hello to you. And Paul Mahoney, founder and CEO of Nova Financial Group.
Stephen.
Welcome. Andy, going to go to you first for the first question, and it's this. I have a fairly substantial life insurance policy, but want to ensure that the payout goes to my children, not into my estate. Is it right that I can nominate it to go into a trust and therefore have it separated from the rest of my estate?
Yeah, in short, yes, is the answer. I mean, most life insurance contracts, bonds will come with a very short form trust deed, which allow you to do that quite simply, such that when they do pay out, the proceeds are outside of the estate. So it should be something that either financial advisor or their accountant could deal with quite simply.
Okay. Would it be something you talk over directly with the insurance company at any time?
Well, most of these, as far as I recall, most of these will come with a quite a short form trust deed, which you literally like an application form. You fill in your details, and that essentially constitutes the trust.
And the insurance company is capable of administering that
yes,
for you?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's a very simple arrangement, yeah.
Just one thing to be careful there of. Some mortgage brokers that aren't necessarily qualified to give independent insurance advice, but can give non-advised insurance advice, meaning that essentially is it tied to one insurer. So they'll say, here's an insurance product, do you want it or not, type of thing, rather than advising on it. Some of those products don't allow that. Right. So just to be aware, if your mortgage broker offers you a product and you want that to happen, then just check that that's an option and that you can do that.
Would a mortgage broker be getting a fee from that insurance the same way as they would on a mortgage?
They would. There's a difference between advising and non-advice, effectively, where they can't say this is the right product for you, but they can say, given you've taken a mortgage, you might want to think about this. Okay. And then it's effectively your decision to take it or not. And I know in some cases that's not offered as an option when that's the case, so just be a little bit careful.
Okay, good advice. Simon?
I mean, I'd just say I think it's absolutely critical to make sure it goes into a trust, because I see a lot of property investors, they're building portfolios, they think they're being very smart by getting insurance in place to effectively clear the debt when they die. But if that happens, they'd be then paying their 40% tax over their personal allowance. So it's really important to make sure it is in a separate legal entity. Then their beneficiaries can then borrow that money to clear the debt on the properties, which they would need to do when they die, but they're not going to get hit by that 40% tax.
Okay.
So
same old theme, isn't it? Talk to the experts.
Absolutely.
Get good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, Simon, moving on to you. Right, this is a long one. I'm looking to get a mortgage to buy my dream home, although it does need some renovation work which will stretch my finances. I've got a few options, but I'm not sure of the best approach. I'd really appreciate any advice. The property is $630,000 and my estate agent estimates it needs about $100,000 spending on it. I do have £340,000 equity in my current property, so should I take the 100k of equity in my current house to put towards a 140k deposit and borrow 490k, or will lenders accept the value of the property will increase to a minimum of 830,000 following the work being completed? So therefore will then lend me the full 340k deposit, borrow 390k and benefit from the better LTV. Wow.
I think I need to write that down.
Yes.
To get my head around the business. We get a flip chart out.
Need a whiteboard.
So a couple of thoughts on that first of all. So he's already got a property and he's buying a second property as a dream home. Okay, and I think what he's saying is he can get it for 630, spend 100k on it, and increase the value to 830. So that sounds, in principle, like a good project. And using an existing property to release equity. Now, if it's his own home, they'll need to see how much loan to value is going up to, and also they'll need to see he's got enough income to be able to support that. But in theory, he could release some equity from his own home to go and buy other properties. Now, if this second property is one he wants to eventually live in, so he's not renting it out, I think he's going to find that he's going to have a pretty good income to be able to get a residential mortgage on 2 properties. It's much easier if one of them was an investment and it's based on the rental income on that property. But if it's a residential property, the second home, dream home, which is what he's saying, that might be an issue. Now, you also think, well, if he's going to have the dream home he's going to move into, what's he going to do with the other one? And it's possible to maybe change the finance on that from a residential mortgage into what's called a let to buy mortgage, where he then rents that one out and it releases some equity to be able to go and buy the next one. So, as we always say, best to get some really good independent financial advice. But in principle, what he's saying is possible. Just be aware, because it's not an investment property, he's going to have a pretty good income to be able to do that, I believe.
Just a bit concerned about the last sort of few words when he says, will I benefit from the better loan to value? I think, Paul, you'd go on gearing, wouldn't you, rather than...
Yeah, I suppose. I think that was part of the question where they asked whether would the lender accept the new expected value, and they wouldn't. So they won't speculate on the new value.
No. So what he'd have to do, he'd have to buy it, spend the money on it, and then he could potentially refinance.
Or he could just revalue it,
or he could just leave it as it is if he did have lots of equity there, which would be
Are there any tax issues moving from one property to renovating and building up the value on the next one? I mean, I presume you're...
I mean, if there are significant capital improvements on the new dream home that he's going to live in, then in theory you will be able to deduct those from a capital gains tax computation. But if it's his dream home and he's going to live there, he's going to get main residence relief from capital gains tax anyway. So it's probably somewhat irrelevant. I would have thought.
Right. But of course, he'll lose any benefit if he sells the first one, won't he?
Well, so for the periods, for the periods he actually occupied that property as his main residence, he will always get main residence relief. That you can also rather confusingly get relief for periods of deemed occupation as well, and probably the most well known of those is what used to be the final 3 years of ownership, always qualified for main residence relief. It's now 18 months, so the last 18 months you qualify for main residence relief if it's ever been your main residence. So it allows you to move out and still qualify for a bit of extra relief. And I think it's only mooted at the moment, they're going to reduce it to 9 months. So that kind of period of grace has lost its favour, I suppose. So.
Right. On the position when you sell your own home and your profits on that are free of any tax, first of all, do you think that's something that's going to stay with us, or do you think that those days are coming to an end? And the second part of that is just, I wonder, at what numeric calculation do revenues say, no, you're moving too much, you're effectively got a trading business here?
Yeah, so there are a couple of interesting questions there. The first one about if you keep essentially moving house every 3 or 4 months and selling the old house. I mean, really, it isn't about the time that you occupy a house. It's not the quantity, it's the quality of the occupation. So essentially, as a matter of fact, are you living in there as your main residence? And as you would expect, there's an awful lot of case law on that, which I won't bore you with. The first question about whether, looking into the crystal ball, whether there will be a main residence relief or a principal private residence relief or whatever you want to call it, is an interesting one. I think it's probably one of the sacred cows of the UK tax system.
Until we get an aggressive chancellor, I suppose.
Well, yeah. I think... Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised by anything at the moment,
yeah.
Given track record last few years.
You've got to remember, though, I mean, and again, I'm digressing somewhat, so I apologise. There's a big difference between income tax rates and capital gains tax rates. I mean, a lot of people suggest there should be an equalisation, and when I mean equalisation, I mean bringing the capital gains tax rates up. That, for me, isn't fair, because actually, as the system exists at the moment for capital gains tax, there is no allowance for indexation and inflation anymore. So actually, you can pay tax on really something which isn't an economic gain at all. It's just inflationary. And for me, that really is the reason why the rates are much lower. The same would apply to a main residence. If you've had a main residence in anywhere for the last 10, 15 years, a lot of that appreciation is going to be inflation. Clearly, there's been significant property growth as well. But
I think if they did tax that as well, it would probably kill the property market, because if someone says, well, for me to go and move to another house, and I'm going to have to pay all this tax, that would be a real debilitator.
The in and out costs today are quite prohibitive in some cases.
I mean, stamp duties.
Also, landlords are a much softer target than homeowners.
Right? Yeah.
Homeowners are big voters.
That's
Good.
a real vote loser, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you, gents. On that note, Paul, will go to you. I live in London and was thinking about buying a buy-to-let near home, but I've read London is on the decline and the Midlands and the North West is now a good place to buy. I'm a bit confused. Is it better to be close?
Okay, I think some people might disagree with me on this, but I don't think investing should be anything to do with where you live. I think it should be commercially minded, unemotional, and I read a stat recently that said that 9 out of 10 people buy within 5 miles of their own home. And that makes sense on the surface of it, but if you think about the mindset of where you buy when you're buying a place to live, it's very emotional. You know, it's close to work, it's close to your kids' school, it's where you like. That's got nothing to do with making money. Whereas making money should be the complete opposite of that. So you might get lucky, and buying near home might be a good place to invest, but that's probably just luck. And back to this person's question, London's a tough market for buy-to-let at the moment for a number of reasons. You know, the tax changes, the finance changes, all of those things affect high-value, low-yield properties the most and make it quite difficult to make money from, and even to finance and to make it viable in the first place. Whereas the other places he's mentioned, like the Midlands and the North West, where property prices are much lower and yields are much higher, and actually now they're growing at a faster rate than London and the South East as well, I agree, those markets are much stronger. So they make more sense, both from a finance perspective and effectively, a growth perspective now as well, for making money from investing in property.
Okay. And what about management of the asset?
It's really just about surrounding yourself with the right team. You know, especially if you're investing in major cities, Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, in those areas, there are great property managers there that can make your properties very passive. It's also about the properties you invest in as well. You don't really want to invest in a Victorian house if it's miles away from home, because it's going to take maintenance and it's probably going to cost you a lot of money. But if you're investing in a new or near new property, it's probably likely to be far less maintenance and far more passive. Some developments, you can even invest in developments that have on-site management, and that's completely passive because there's somebody there most of, if not all the time. So consider the factors that you never, just think about the fact that you're never going to want to go there, and how does that work? But it definitely can work.
Okay, great. That's all we've got time for in this half of the show, so join us again shortly after the break.
The tax system has evolved significantly over recent years for property investors and developers. You may think that you and your accountant have a grip on these changes. However, unless you're receiving specialist tax advice from a specialist tax advisory firm, then it's unlikely to be the case. At ETC Tax, our team of highly experienced chartered tax advisors work with private individuals and companies to deliver effective tax planning whilst meeting HMRC compliance requirements. Let us help you to meet your personal or commercial objectives in the most tax-efficient manner. ETC Tax, making the complex simple.
Hello, my name's Simon Zutshi. I'm the author of Property Magic, which you can buy on Amazon for $12.99 or indeed get on Audible if you prefer listening to books. Now, I started investing in property in 1995 and I became financially independent by the age of 32, but I made a huge number of mistakes because I learned the hard way. You don't have to do that. I've explained in this book how you can make a huge amount of money investing in property when you know how to do it. And one of the secrets is working with motivated sellers. People for whom the speed and certainty of the sale is more important than the amount of money they get. And we look to find people who've got a problem and come up with an ethical win-win solution. I explain exactly how you do it in here. It's a bestseller. You can buy it online, as I said. However, you can get a complimentary copy. All you have to do is phone the number below or go to the website. I ask you just to pay for the postage, tell us where you want to send it in the UK, and we'll send it completely free of charge to you. Call us right now and we'll send a book to you straight away. Learn how to invest with knowledge, invest with skill.
Property is a great investment option, but it's one of the largest purchases that you'll ever make. As individuals, we're all limited by our resources, and regardless of our experience, knowledge or time, we can achieve much more with the help of a qualified team and extra resources being available. Nova Financial specialize in assisting clients to achieve financial freedom through property investment. With over 100 years of experience, we shape your family's future. To invest in property with absolute confidence, call us on 0203 8600 or visit nova.financial.
Welcome back to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin, and with me today are Andy Wood, Simon Zutshi and Paul Mahoney. Welcome back, guys. Andy, your question. I've heard of something called capital allowances, which I think is the ability to offset all expenditure on rented property. This relates to fixtures and fittings, and this is to be set against tax, even if its expenditure is from the previous years. Is that right, or have I got the wrong end of the stick?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, with any business, and property is the same, you need to make a distinction between what is capital and what is revenue expenditure. And from a property point of view, if you're I don't know, if you're going to repaint, clean the carpets, those kind of things, maybe sand some floorboards, they're going to be revenue expenses, and they can just be deducted from your profits for the year. So it's just an expense against your profit. Capital is something different, and it's really where you are, I suppose, improving the fabric of the building, or you are doing something which has an enduring benefit for the business. So in terms of property, it might be putting an extension on the back, a new boiler or a new roof or something like that. And in those scenarios, you cannot, in the property business, usually get a revenue deduction for those. They're taken into account when you're looking at the capital gains tax position for the property, assuming it's an investment rather than a trading venture. I think the question really is, it sounds to me more about buying furniture or something like that for the property, where you, again, up until quite recently, you had something called a wear and tear allowance, which was a bit of a flat, you could choose between a wear and tear or a renewals basis. The wear and tear was a percentage of the rents coming in. Or alternatively, you could just opt to have to essentially claim the cost of replacing, say, the furniture against your profits for the year, and you had to choose one and stick with one. The wear and tear allowance has fallen away now, so essentially you're looking at a renewals basis for most property investors now.
So, I love capital allowances. I've done a number of commercial to residential conversions. And you can claim those at holiday homes, you can claim them as well, serviced accommodation. Now you can only claim it once on the lifetime of the property, so your solicitor needs to check if it's been claimed already, but most people haven't claimed it because it's not a very well-known tax. And if you're buying the property in your own name, which people generally don't do now, but I bought them in the past, you can just take that and offset it directly against your income tax. So again, get good advice, but I think it'd be really powerful.
Yeah, I think in terms of commercial property, absolutely. So yes. I was coming from a residential property angle. Commercial property, yes, you buy an office and pretty much anything which has been put in there, what carpet tiles, the the roof squares and all kinds of systems you'll be
Yeah,
able to
conditioning,
maintain.
all sorts of stuff,
aircon,
yeah.
Just out of interest, if for instance you buy a new apartment, you probably, I ask this because the questioner asks about fixtures and fittings. So often you buy a leasehold flat, and of course those fixtures and fittings are actually part of the freeholder's property, are they not?
No, I don't think so.
Not so far as I understand. Anything within the shell is yours.
Is yours for the time of the
Okay.
lease. It
So
goes back at the end of the lease, obviously. But
Yeah, well that's the point, and I wonder if you've been claiming relief on it on the
Yeah.
way through.
if someone's bought it and developed it and then split into leasehold flats, a smart owner probably would have claimed the capital allowance in that conversion process, I would have thought.
Yeah, I think that's the question really. I was wondering whether you're in danger here of claiming twice on.
You can only be claimed once.
Yeah.
And Sam was right about when he mentioned about the furnished holiday lets as well. So furnished holiday let is where you have a holiday home and you let it on a commercial basis, and that moves from what is, I suppose, ostensibly an investment play into it's treated as a trade really for tax purposes. So a lot of those really attractive reliefs you could get, entrepreneurs relief, potentially business property relief, although it's a very tricky area, and as Simon says, capital allowances.
Okay, great stuff. Okay, Simon, having sold our house, brackets now retiring, we are now nicely debt-free and looking to start investing in the equity from the sale of £100,000. A seriously poor credit history has made it very difficult though, and even opening a decent bank account is tough. Do you know anything different to this? Is there any route we can take to make life easier? Does rocking up with a fairly big deposit make a difference to the lender?
So most lenders, if you've got a adverse credit record, are not going to want to lend to you because ultimately they want to make sure they get their money back. However, there are some lenders that will lend at quite expensive rates, but the important thing also to remember is you can repair a credit rating. It takes a bit of time, but by opening a bank account, getting a credit card that you pay off every month, you can build and enhance your credit rating to the point where someone's prepared to lend to you. There are other ways of doing it as well. If they've got £100,000, they could find people who know what they're doing in property and have got great deals but have run out of their own cash. They could do a joint venture where they come together and they maybe put the money in and the property could be in someone else's name. Obviously you need to get to know people very, very well before you do joint ventures, and you have to have everything in writing and documented and do things properly, obviously. But there are some creative things you can absolutely do. There are also some strategies where you don't actually need to own the property, such as purchase options, rent to rent, where you can make cash flow from property. And I guess it really depends if they're in their retirement, what are they looking to do? Are they looking to get extra income coming in? Are they looking to get capital growth, in which case they would need to own the property? So it's really important when someone says, I want to get into property, well, what exactly are you looking to achieve? Because that might affect the strategy you utilise.
But I suppose the exit's pretty important too.
Absolutely,
isn't it? Yeah.
absolutely. But retirement age, getting mortgages is not a problem because it's based on the rental income. So if they could repair their mortgage over time and they could invest in property,
Okay.
is the answer.
But interestingly enough, I did a question time the other day, and one of the mortgage broker related parties that were giving advice was saying that now 80-year-olds can get buy-to-let mortgages
Absolutely,
simply
yeah.
because
Up
it's
to the age
based
of
on
100, yeah.
Yeah, because they're not the person who's paying it technically. Because a normal residential mortgage, they want you to have paid it off by the time you're 65 or 70, because they say, well, how are you going to afford to pay the mortgage? And with an investment property, well, you're not paying the mortgage. The theory is that the tenants pay the mortgage, as long as you buy the right property in the right area and do your research. So therefore, the age doesn't really matter so much.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier about sort of percentage mortgages sort of, going up, I suppose, effectively. Have the deposit conditions weakened or lessened on buy-to-let properties now, Paul?
Not particularly, no. I suppose for that reason, it's more the serviceability that they look at, that they've strengthened that, in that lenders now effectively do your stress testing for you. They have to, which is a good thing. There's a benchmark rate that they need to stress test the rent to make sure you can afford a much higher rate. So that's good. It means that rather than having to do it yourself, the lenders are doing it for you. The loan to values haven't changed too much. There are lenders that will go to higher loan to values, but the rates increase. The same way as Simon mentioned, for this person with adverse credit, there are lenders that will lend to them, but the rates will be higher. So maybe that's an option for them at first, and then they could perhaps bring it down when they repair their credit.
Okay, and typically what would the percentage be for buy-to-let today?
For an average person or for this person?
For an average person, for an average application.
75% loan to value is around about 2%, 2.5% at the moment. You can get slightly better if you're more experienced and you have properties, or slightly higher if you're a first-time buyer, or if it's a slightly strange property or something like that.
And what would be the most optimistic proposition? 80, 85%?
For buy-to-let, 75% is what I call the average maximum.
Okay.
Because that's what most lenders will go to and still.
But for a
get good
premium,
rates.
what could you take that to?
You could take it up to 85.
Okay.
And the rates would be about 4.5%.
Okay, as opposed to 2.5%.
2.5.
Okay, great. Okay, right, Paul, we're going to move on to your question now. Freehold versus leasehold. I've read about dodgy lease agreements and that scared me a bit, so should I just go for freehold property? Well, I think the answer there is don't buy in London, whatever you do.
Yeah, another pretty common question. I think with all the recent media around here, certain builders offering those dodgy leases, that scared a few people, but that's definitely the vast minority of the market. It's not the norm. And obviously most apartments or flats are leasehold, and according to a number of reports, apartments have outperformed houses over the past decade, both from a yield and a growth perspective. I'd say the main reason for that is their location and also the shift in generations. A lot of, we call it space for place. The old cliche of having the quarter-acre block and the garden and the picket fence isn't the dream anymore. Young professionals like myself are more than happy with their centrally located 2-bedroom apartment for much longer than they were before. So a lot of people, that's resulting in the repopulation of city centres. We spoke about Manchester earlier. I think it's an interesting stat. 20 years ago, there was only 1,000 people living in central Manchester. Now there's 30,000. So that shows the change there. People, especially young professionals, want bars, restaurants, cafes, jobs on their doorstep. So I'd say that's probably what's driving that shift in the market. So to rule that type of property out as an investment option, I think is a mistake. But you obviously need to understand the lease. What's the length of it for a start? That's an important one. A lot of people get worried about leases running out, but so long as they're longer than 150 years, they're going to outlive you. And as long as they're longer than 80 years, they're not really going to cause you any problems unless they get below that.
Well, I think one of the important things again here is that there is so much legislation now that are protecting people in these situations, that yes, these dodgy leases, dodgy landlords have come to light, but it's the fact of the legislation that they have come to light, and it's being solved. And I don't think anybody should be really put off by leasehold. And in fact, a good leasehold with a good freeholder with a good managing agent can run your block very, very well and enhance the value of your property. Anything to add on that, Andy?
Not really.
Okay, Simon?
No.
Okay, well, there we are. That's all we have time for today. So thank you very much to Andy Woods, Simon Zutshi and Paul Mahoney.
If you have any questions you'd like to send to the experts at Property Question Time, you can submit them via our website, on social media, or email us on info@propertytelevision.co.uk.
The tax system has evolved significantly over recent years for property investors and developers. You may think that you and your accountant have a grip on these changes. However, unless you're receiving specialist tax advice from a specialist tax advisory firm, then it's unlikely to be the case. At ETC Tax, our team of highly experienced chartered tax advisors work with private individuals and companies to deliver effective tax planning whilst meeting HMRC compliance requirements. Let us help you to meet your personal or commercial objectives in the most tax-efficient manner. ETC Tax, making the complex simple.
Property is a great investment option, but it's one of the largest purchases that you'll ever make. As individuals, we're all limited by our resources, and regardless of our experience, knowledge or time, we can achieve much more with the help of a qualified team and extra resources being available. Nova Financial specialize in assisting clients to achieve financial freedom through property investment. With over 100 years of experience, we shape your family's future. To invest in property with absolute confidence, call us on 0203 8600 or visit nova.financial.